Rome doesn't fall in a day. It thins over a century, until 476, when a boy emperor is sent home and no one bothers to replace him. Constantinople holds. 3 worlds divide the map. None of them agree on who comes next. Most people in medieval Europe never leave the village they are born in. They work land they don't own, pay rent and labor, and eat what the season gives them. But every castle and every cathedral rests on their labor. The heavy plow breaks soils Rome couldn't touch. The 3-field system feeds a growing continent. Forests become fields, millions of hectares cleared in 3 centuries. The mill takes the most exhausting daily work, grinding, processing cloth, hammering ore, and hands it to the river. For the first time, muscle is not the limit. Hunger is the constant threat. 1 year in 4 is bad. When 7 come in a row, 1315 to 1322, 1 in 10 Europeans starves. In June 1381, English peasants march on London and demand the end of serfdom. Tyler is killed at negotiations. The march fails. Within a generation, serfdom in England is gone anyway. The peasant is bound. He is also irreplaceable. The Middle Ages run on violence. Not exceptional violence, routine. The castle on every ridge controls the valley below. The knight is not a hero. He is an investment, sustained by lords who cannot fight without him. From 793 they come by sea, raiding first, then trading, then settling. Normandy, Russia, Iceland, Greenland, and ashore in North America, none of them stay on. The men who terrorized medieval Europe also found half of it. The raids force a response. Stone castles appear on every ridge. To defend them, Europe builds the knight, the most expensive soldier in history. One afternoon in October, 1066, changes the English language, the English ruling class, and the English map. William of Normandy kills Harold and claims a kingdom. The Domesday Book follows within 20 years. The Holy Land. The Crusades turned the Mediterranean into a battlefield for 3 competing faiths. Saladin takes Jerusalem back in 1187. Richard arrives with an army and leaves with a treaty. In 6 months, the Mongols destroy every army in Central Europe. Nothing stands between them and the Atlantic. Then a message arrives from the east. A great Khan has died. The riders turn back. Europe survives not by valor, but by timing. Most medieval wars are won not in battle, but through starvation. Siege warfare decides more outcomes than knights ever did. Crecy shows what longbows can do to armored knights in a single afternoon. The 100 Years' War proves the same point for 5 generations. 17-year-old peasant from Lorraine tells the Dauphin she has heard from God. He gives her an army. She lifts the siege of Orléans in 9 days. Captured the following year. Burned at 19. 25 years later, France wins the war. Gunpowder finishes what longbows had started. The church is not an institution you attend on Sunday. It is the structure of time, law, and death. The monasteries preserve what Rome had written. Gregory I defines the papacy's reach. Hildegard of Bingen writes on medicine, cosmology, and music simultaneously, in a century that has no word for what she is. In 1054, Rome and Constantinople excommunicate each other. Christianity splits permanently. At Clermont in 1095, the Pope calls for a holy war. The crowd surges forward. Thousands take the cross. The papacy at its most powerful, capable of moving armies with a single sermon. Jerusalem falls to the Crusaders in 1099. The massacre that follows haunts Christian memory for centuries. Crusading creates institutions. The Templars protect pilgrims, then become bankers and a state within the church. The Reconquista pushes south through Iberia for 7 centuries. The investiture controversy asks who appoints bishops, pope or king. Pope Innocent III launches a crusade against fellow Christians. The Inquisition polices belief with courts. But the church also produces its own critics. Francis of Assisi walks away from wealth. Thomas Aquinas spends his life proving reason and faith are not enemies. And millions walk to Jerusalem, Rome, and Santiago on foot because they believe a physical journey can change their standing before God. Chartres, Notre Dame, Cologne. Stone made vertical. Each one a century of labor, quarried, carved, and raised by men who will never see it finished. The most ambitious engineering the medieval world attempts. Then the certainty cracks. 3 popes sit simultaneously. A reformer is burned at Constance for asking the wrong questions. On Christmas Day 800, a Frankish warlord becomes the first man in 4 centuries to hold Western Europe in a single hand. He holds it for 14 years. Then it fractures. The idea doesn't. Kingship after Charlemagne means negotiation. Alfred holds England against the Vikings when every other kingdom falls. The Holy Roman Emperor claims authority over all Christian rulers and spends 2 centuries fighting the Pope for it. Henry IV stands barefoot in the snow at Canossa to prove the Church can still enforce it. He speaks 6 languages, corresponds with Arab scholars, negotiates Jerusalem without a battle, and gets excommunicated twice. Stupor Mundi, wonder of the world. The Middle Ages produces exactly 1 ruler like this. After Frederick, the constraints multiply. Magna Carta puts the king under the law. Parliament gives the governed a formal voice. Philip IV imprisons the Pope and takes his assets. Taxation builds bureaucracies. Bureaucracies build states. By 1400, France is recognizably France. Germany is still 300 quarreling territories. The city is an escape. A serf who reaches one and stays a year and a day cannot be reclaimed. Stadtluft macht frei. City air makes you free, after a year and a day. The guilds organize what comes next. Venice has no farmland, no army, no natural resources. What it has is position, between east and west, at the mouth of the Adriatic. For 3 centuries, that is enough. The Hanseatic League binds a dozen port cities into a trading bloc with its own law and its own navy. The Mongol peace reopens the Silk Road. Plague travels the same route, and so do ideas. Marco Polo returns from China with stories of paper money and postal systems. The world has grown larger. The Medici turn wool into banking, into political power. Jakob Fugger finances emperors, popes, and kings simultaneously, and tells one of them to his face that he has put him on the throne. A new class is forming, not noble, not clergy. A man whose power comes entirely from accounting. In October 1347, Genoese ships dock in Messina. The sailors are dying. Sicily orders the ships away. But the plague is already ashore. Within 5 years, between 1/3 and 1/2 of Europe is gone. Nothing had prepared medieval Europe for what follows. The Church prays and cannot explain it. The flagellants march. Jewish communities are massacred before the plague has even reached them. Then something unexpected happens. Half the workers dead means the survivors can negotiate. Wages rise. Serfdom quietly collapses. The plague that destroys medieval certainties also begins, accidentally, dismantling medieval hierarchy. The second waves come in 1361, 1369, 1374. The 14th century is a century of dying that never quite stops. The medieval world doesn't end with a single event. It ends with an accumulation. Each invention quietly removing one of the walls holding the old structure in place. Bologna gives Europe the university in 1088. Eyeglasses extend the working life of every scholar who needs them. The mechanical clock divides the day into equal measurable hours. And the first thing that changes is how people think about time itself. Gunpowder follows the Silk Road west and dismantles the military logic that had sustained feudalism for 4 centuries. The printing press makes ideas uncontrollable. 20 million books in 50 years. The Church's monopoly on the written word collapses in a generation. On May 29, 1453, Ottoman cannon breaches the Theodosian walls after 1,000 years of holding. The city that preserved Roman law and Greek philosophy falls in a single day. Byzantine scholars take their manuscripts west. The same year Constantinople falls, France expels England from its soil. 2 ends of the old world in a single year. Portugal has been mapping the African coast for decades. Bartolomeo Dias rounds the Cape in 1488. A sea route to Asia exists. Europe only needed to take it. Columbus leaves Spain in August. In October, a sailor sights land that no European map contains. The Reconquista ends the same year. The medieval world runs out of map. $1,500 is not a threshold. The same bells still ring. The same fields are still farmed. The Middle Ages doesn't end. It changes hands and keeps going. Universities, nation-states, common law, double-entry bookkeeping, Gothic architecture, the concept of individual conscience. None of these arrive in 1500. All of them are built, slowly, imperfectly, in the 1,000 years before it. 7 forces. 1,000 years. None of them finished.